Siemen Danziger, better known by his anglicized names Zymen Danseker and Siemen Danseker, was a 17th-century Dutch privateer and corsair. His name is also written Danziker, Dansker, or Danser.Danseker, and the English pirate John Ward were the two most prominent renegades operating in the Barbary coast during the early 17th century, both of whom were said to command squadrons in Algiers and Tunis equal to the European counterparts, and represented a formidable naval power as allies. Later in his Barbary career, Dansker became known by the Turkish epithet Danser.His, commanding a vast squadron made up of English and Turks while in the service of Algiers. He captured over 40 ships in a 2-year period after turning Turk, and was stopped only after his capture and execution in 1611. Both men are featured prominently in Kitab al-Munas fi Akbar Afriqiya wa Tunis, written by Tunisian writer and historian Ibn Abi Dinar. Biography. A Dutchman, he served as a privateer in the 80 Years' War and afterwards settled in Marseille, France, marrying the governor's daughter. In 1607 he stole a ship and sailed for Algiers. Finding himself in the service of Redouan, the Pasha of Algiers, he led a brief but infamous career as a Barbary corsair, where it is sometimes claimed that he introduced the round ship. The exact circumstances are vague as to the reasons behind his becoming a corsair. However, he was made welcome as an enemy of the Spaniards, and had become one of the Taif race's leading captains within a year of his arrival. Often bringing Spanish prizes and prisoners to Algiers, he became known under the names Danser.His, Delhi Race and Delhi Capitan among the people on the Barbary coast and the Turks due to his exploits on the sea. His fleet quickly grew in power, as he incorporated captured ships into his fleet, and was supplied by Algiers with men and news of the shipyards. He was also the first to lead the Algiers out of the Straits of Gibraltar, the farthest distance any had ever successfully navigated, and travelled as far as Iceland. Iceland would later be attacked by Barbary corsairs in 1616. Siemen took at least 40 ships and sank many of them during the 3 years that followed. After 3 more years of pirating, he had become quite rich and lived in an opulent palace. Siemen the Dancer attacked ships of any nation and made trading in the Mediterranean Sea increasingly difficult for every nation. Many nations therefore looked for ways to stop his attacks. Siemen soon became acquainted with other renegades, particularly Englishmen pirates Peter Easton and Jack Ward, and he formed a powerful alliance with the latter. Eventually, a French fleet under the command of de Bully de Persac, while being assisted by 8 Spanish galleys, for a short time threatened to capture him, but because of a sudden storm he was able to escape. He sailed along the coast with his ships where his pursuers could not reach them. 8 more Spanish men of war, under the command of Don Luis Fajardo de Córdoba, and an English squadron, under the command of Sir Thomas Shawley, were also trying to capture Siemen the Dancer at the time. Some of the exploits of Siemen the Dancer are mentioned in a report written by Andrew Barker in 1609. In 1609, while taking a Spanish galleon off Valencia, he used the opportunity to communicate a message to Henry IV and the French court through the Jesuit priests on board. He wished to return to Marseille, having left his wife and children behind long ago, and wished to be exonerated for his crimes. He was reunited with his family later that year, shortly after arriving in Marseille with 4 well-armed warships on November 17. 1609. Welcomed by the Duke of Guise, he presented to him a present of some Turks, who were at once sent to the galleys, as well as a considerable sum in Spanish gold. He resided in Marseille for a year when French authorities asked him to lead an expedition against the corsairs. Despite rumors of his capture, he returned to France later that same year. In 1615 he was called up by Louis XIII to negotiate the release of French ships being held by Yusuf Dey in Tunis. According to the account of William Lithgow, Dansker was led ashore in a ruse by Yusuf, captured by janissaries, and beheaded.